So in another move towards authoritarianism, Arizona has banned the filming of police officers within 8 feet of them. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So I remember being outraged back in 1991 when I saw the videos of Rodney King being beaten by police officers in Los Angeles. Like most Americans, including the President of the United States at the time, Republican George H.W. Bush, we believe this was clear evidence of police engaging in abusive, racist behavior. The incident led almost directly to riots in Los Angeles and arguably to the acquittal of O.J. Simpson on its murder charge. But what it did more than anything is it opened the eyes of people like me, frankly, who had heard the stories of black people being harassed by police officers, but yet that was so outside of my experience, I just couldn't imagine it. So seeing the way that they abused Rodney King on video completely changed the dialogue we had in the United States when it came to police behavior and the subject of race. But at the same time, back in the era of Rodney King, video cameras were huge. I remember being down in Florida with my family and my wife, as we were walking through Disney World, carrying this huge camera on her shoulder, and I commented that I felt like I was walking along with an NBC camera crew. My, how times have changed. Now everybody is carrying around in their pocket a video camera of much, much higher quality than that in their cell phone. And boy, has that changed the dynamic of that discussion. I mean, after all, with the Rodney King case, we could say, well, that was just an example of a few bad actors out there. Those were bad police officers in a bad police department. And after all, that can't be something that's commonly happening, right? Well, it turns out that we were wrong, and I admit it. And frankly, I'm here to apologize to black people for the fact that I couldn't truly comprehend the harassment that you have been facing on a regular basis from police officers. Now, the reason I know that this exists, of course, is because of the plethora of videos that there are out there, with people recording their interactions with police officers and demonstrating clearly how police officers regularly behave in a fashion that is outright racist and abusive and abuses the position that they've been granted under our governmental system. I mean, we might never have known about the outright murder of George Floyd were it not for the fact that people were videotaping it. Or how about the video of Ahmaud Arbery being killed? In both those cases, the videos led almost directly to the perpetrators being sentenced for murder, as they should be. And the prevalence of these videos has made it clear that the lived experience of racism by black people is not something that's out of the ordinary. Now, these videos pose a serious threat to white supremacists, who truthfully are still the minority in the United States. Well, I have been privileged by the color of my skin, frankly, and as a result haven't had the kind of interactions with police officers that are so evident on so many of these videos, and haven't had people chasing me down while I'm simply jogging through a neighborhood. I would consider myself to be someone who is truly opposed to racism. But it just shows the power of these videos that for much of my life I was able to kind of step back, and it was just hard for me to imagine the full extent of the violence that black people were facing. Until, of course, I got to see some of these videos. That certainly brought it all home. And indeed, we have to remember what Martin Luther King said about nonviolence. That watching the reaction of the racists to the nonviolent actions of black protesters is exactly the kind of thing that would create the kind of moral outrage across the country that would ultimately lead to civil rights victories. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. Well, similarly, these videos are exactly the type of thing that increase the moral outrage of the anti-racist majority in our country who still haven't been, in many cases, directly affected by racism. And for us, seeing these videos gives rise to a sense of moral outrage that leads directly to political activism, the kind of thing that led to the protests out in Portland, and frankly has prompted incredible pressure on police departments to amend their procedures. Were it not for these videos, it would be all too easy for police officers to stand back and say, oh, they're just criminals, they're exaggerating. and to poo-poo it. And again, based upon the lived experience that so many of us who do have the privilege of white skin, we might be willing to accept that explanation. But with the videos, that's no longer an option. I mean, if you don't believe that police officers will change their story to protect themselves and their friends, I think you're kidding yourself. My wife, in fact, used to work at a court, and she talked about the fact that she'd hear police officers joking about the fact that they beat up some suspect. But when she saw the report, it said, oh, the suspect banged his head while he was being put in the back of the police car. The truth is that these videos are an important tool to be able to counter that kind of abuse of authority and to be able to create the kind of environment where we can finally address this scourge of racism that has unfortunately been the birthright of this country. Well, the truth is, for much of history, Republicans have used race as a means to divide us, simply by relying upon dog whistles. That was the term used to mean statements that made it clear that they were talking about race without explicitly using those terms. Like, oh, we're going to have a war on crime. But isn't it funny that all the criminals who we're going to be warring against happen to have black skin? Well, as it turns out, the MAGA crowd has no need for dog whistles anymore. And that's, by the way, why his people love Donald Trump so much. Well, if you want to find out more about how the rhetoric of racism in America has been transformed by Donald Trump, check out this video over here. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.